Lovely. Hi everyone, I'm Jane and I'm a very grateful member of Cocaine Anonymous, and I'm so pleased you've just turned the lights down a little bit. I feel a bit like a rabbit in the headlights, but really grateful to be here tonight, and thank you, Michelle, for asking me to share. Michelle contacted me 10 months ago, I checked my phone, to say, oh Jane, we'd love to have you down to the Ferndown meeting. When's it your sobriety birthday? And I said, oh, it's not until March next year. And she was like, great, I'll book you in. And I thought, fab, months and months away, she will forget. And as the last couple of weeks have gone by, and I thought maybe she has forgotten, but alas not. Michelle messaged me I think last week, saying you're still up for coming down, and of course, it's a pleasure to be here. And just looking around the room tonight, it's quite a lot of people I know, and quite a lot of people who really mean a lot to me in my recovery, and it's just beautiful to be surrounded by people who I trust implicitly with my life and have meant a lot in my journey. And I hope you don't mind me saying Ryan, but I'm looking at Ryan over there, and Ryan, when I walked into my first CA meeting 20 years ago this month, was the first ever share that I heard. And it's like, wow, it just blows me away. And I'm actually not 20 years this month, I'm 12 years. I was 12 years on the 4th of March, and my story does involve relapse. But also I think what I'm proud to say is that, long-term recovery is possible in this fellowship after relapse. And that's been, my journey that I've been blessed with. So yeah, this time, sort of 12 years ago, I've just come off the back of a week-long detox, and I'd spent 5.5 years in this relapse. I'd spent almost 3 years in this fellowship and really thought I had it sussed, and I didn't realise how much the illness was on me. And I can remember my sponsors in the room tonight, and this woman has been through so much with me, and I can remember it towards the end of I was coming up 3 years, and I didn't realise how much the illness was on me, how warped my thinking was, when I rang her and said, I'm leaving the fellowship. And she was like, Jane, you're really making it. I can remember it, really making a big mistake. I really want you to think about this. And yet I was so full of self-willed. I knew best, and I left the fellowship. And it's funny, actually, I can remember one of the really big feelings, like a euphoric feeling, was that I will never have to do a share again. Thank God I will never have to share. And I actually remember when I was coming back into the fellowship, this is like the 12 years ago, thinking, oh my God, I've got to come back, and I will talk a bit more about it, but knowing I'm going to have to do a share at some point, just thinking, no. But actually, I don't get to cherry pick what I do and don't do in my recovery. And, it's testament to that is that I sit here today. But, so I came back into recovery, and it was like this 5.5 years. I'd swapped one substance for another. My relapse was alcohol, and alcohol prior to that I thought had never been my thing. And my relapse was alcohol, and it was the most miserable. I remember barely anything in that period. I remember a couple of things that I did during that time, but every day was Groundhog Day. And it was the most painful 5.5 years of my life. And I couldn't find my way back into the fellowship. I had a couple of close people to me, that would take me along to meetings, and I just couldn't find my way back. So, I through the local drug and alcohol services, I knew I had to do a detox. I knew I had to have a separation from the alcohol, but I knew 100% that I had to come back into recovery. I knew that it worked for me before. I knew it was still working for, the people sat in this room tonight, who were on that journey with me at that time. They were still doing this stuff, and I knew it worked. I knew that my detox would give me maybe a few days, it might give me a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, but I knew that I had to sort out my thinking, and go through the 12-step process again, in order to get sober. And, thank God I still sit here today. So I'll tell you a little bit, about my life. I won't go into it too much because, at nearly 58, there's quite a lot to cover. But my life from a very, very young age, there was something not quite right. I don't remember ever thinking at the time there was something not quite right. But looking back, I'm from a very normal family. But it was always acting out for me, always. Nothing was ever good enough. I craved excitement, drama, and I was the drama in my family for many, many years. And I do share this, my first addiction was shoplifting sweets. I was on a police caution at 12 years old for shoplifting sweets. And it wasn't that I needed these sweets. I loved the buzz. I loved that feeling of excitement. And this was what my using was like. I used the very high drugs. And everything was about me getting a buzz out of life and stuff the consequences. I never would have a thought of any consequences that were going to happen. And my consequences in the end were vast. And it was just like I bulldozed through my life, through the lives of others, just not knowing what was wrong with me. And and also sort of one thing that's so apparent to me is that I've always this, and I know we use the word chameleon, but I was, this absolute chameleon and I would have to move around groups of people because I couldn't sustain friendships, etc. with one particular group. I would always cause such harms that people wouldn't want me around them. And another thing, this is sort of me for particular, is like on the outside, from the outside, everything can look okay. I mean, I've got a job that I've been in now for 32 years, and it's quite a good job. How I kept it is a miracle, and I think that was just God looking out for me. But I can present very well, I can look okay, and I can have the nice shiny things that don't mean a lot today. But inside, I'm absolutely crippled. And when I found myself, coming into recovery at the age of 37, I was absolutely bankrupt. I was emotionally bankrupt. I was spiritually bankrupt. I no longer knew who I was, and I was absolutely crippled. I'd gone through, like most of us, the normal sort of journey. In fact, alcohol was the first substance that I ever put into my system. And even though my relapse was alcohol, and a lot of people say, the first time I had a drink, it lit me up. That wasn't my experience. I did it because I wanted to be part of, and from a young age, I'm drinking to blackout at weekends. But then when I'm introduced to drugs at the age of 17, that is what lit me up. That's why I know, I'm an addict, not, it's not alcohol for me, even though, alcohol was my last substance. I like the drugs that light me up and I feel like I'm part of. And, I went through, like I say, I've got the job and the family and everything else is all pretty good. But, there's something wrong with me that I want to mix with the absolute, it's like attracts like, doesn't it? For many years, I'm in the shebeens and the blues and carrying on like I think I'm the big I am. And, it led to so much destruction and, and so much pain as well. I go to any lengths, money, everything else, and not having a care for anybody that I'm hurting. And, it was absolute carnage for years, violence, domestic violence, and I'm not a victim, I will give as good as I receive. But the whole thing was chaos, and I just lost my way in life, and this went on for many, many years, and cocaine took hold of me, and it absolutely ravaged its way through my life. And I was in a relationship with somebody, and I thought I've hit the jackpot. I've manipulated him into supplying, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And actually, it was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. And I couldn't get a day clean for years, and I'm using at work. I used to go to work, having had no sleep, not just for one night, 2 nights, and I'd be trying to get some sleep in the stationery cupboard at work and all of that. And I'd get home from work and the same thing would happen every single night. So, yeah, and I remember, I can remember being absolutely at my wit's end with it, just not knowing what to do, not knowing that there was any solution. And I rang the helpline, back in 2005, and got directed to the only CA meeting that we had in Southampton. It had only been open, I think, 3 months, and, people in this room had helped set that meeting up. And like I say, I went along to my first meeting, and I can remember sitting there thinking I was going to go and talk about my problems. I cried my way through the meeting. I think I did share back that night, and goodness knows I was just, crying and everything else. But I left there, and I had drugs in my house, and I didn't use that night. And it was like, wow. And and I went through the steps, and then after a few months changed sponsor and went over to Kim. And God, I mean, you were only, probably 2 years clean at the time, and went through this journey. And and like I say, I lost the willingness after coming up to nearly 3 years, and made that decision to leave. I came back into recovery and asked Kim to sponsor me again. I can remember turning up at your door, you didn't recognise me, and we went through the process. And I will share this, and one of the things that we looked at was what had gone wrong last time, and I will share this. There was something that I felt inside that was missing, and I was looking for attention always from the opposite sex to fix me. And I can remember saying to you, but there's this guy in the meeting, and she was like, no, Jane. She was like, no. And I didn't. And she said, get yourself through the steps. And I spent the first, 8 years or so, not dating, just kept myself focused on myself and learning who I was, understanding who I was, liking myself. And today I love myself, and I don't mean that big-headedly. I love the person that I got to know. I didn't know who I was. And wow, it just makes me feel a bit whoa. But I'm consistent with this stuff, and I can say over the last, there have been times where I've thought, do I really need to do this, and I know that's just that little bit of, that's the illness side, and it's like, no, absolutely, look, went wrong last time, knuckle down, focus. One of the biggest things, that has kept me in Cocaine Anonymous is service, always being willing to do service commitments. For the last 4 months, I'd not had a service commitment. Some life stuff, which I will share just briefly before I end. But I've had sort of 4 months out of service, and I've just got a service commitment last week and a new home group just to change things up a little bit. And one of the biggest things for me is always being willing to help women. And the first few years coming back into CA, there weren't women around in Southampton. They'd come, they'd go back to their home areas through the local rehab. And then about 6-7 years ago, one of the girls that I sponsor now went through rehab in Southampton and stayed in Southampton, and we started to see more and more women. And our fellowship in Southampton, it's full of women now. We've gone from one meeting a week, we've got meetings every night of the weeknights, and it is just a beautiful thing to be a part of. I've done loads of different service commitments. Some I've loved. One I did with Nicole, we didn't love so much, but we've always fulfilled them, always got to the end. I've done a year in the men's prison up at Winchester, mind-blowing bits of service. I love doing H&I, and I've done several stints in the local, rehab centre in Southampton, which I've absolutely loved. For me, I had to change massively. I had to completely have a transformation as a woman. I had to go through the steps, keep practicing the steps. Every morning I pray, I do my inventory, I send my inventory to my sponsor just to keep me accountable, because if she says, no, I don't want it anymore, then I think, oh, tonight I don't need to do it. And I do gratitude list every night, and I know it's not in the big book, but I do like to reflect every day on what I've got in my life. I do have faith, I know, my faith this last few months has really, really got me by. The last probably 4 to 5 years in recovery has been really, really difficult due to life stuff. My parents, both got very ill, and my dad sadly passed away about 5 months ago now, and that was so hard. But I always knew I would be okay. It is life, it is hard. He was very elderly, very, very poorly. And that's, one of the beautiful things that I was given in recovery is the gift and the ability to actually be a good daughter today, a good employee, all of these things, a good friend and hopefully a reasonable sponsor. But the biggest thing to me was the gift that I was able to give back to my family. My mum would ring me when my dad was still at home. He's had a fall, it'll be 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go round there, help her, clean him up, blah, blah, blah. and you know, when he did pass, you know, even the day that he passed, I'm still doing my inventory, still doing my gratitude, you know, and within a week I'm still back in the book with my sponsees, you know, and that was the thing that absolutely got me through it, you know, still being willing to help others. Cocaine Anonymous, you know, I couldn't live my life without this stuff today. Recovery, I live a very normal life, you know, it's a bridge to normal living for me. And this is, I've been doing it so many years, it is just normal, it's what I do. But it has given me so much. It's like, it blows me away sometimes. But there's loads. I'm just trying to think, how many minutes have I got left? Oh no, I've got the 5-minute card. I said to Jess, she said, do you want me to tell you when you've got 5 minutes left? I said no, because when I see the 5-minute card, I start to sort of dry up a little bit. And I know I speak very fast, like I've had speed, but I actually haven't. Let me just have a sip of water. Let me just focus a little bit. So I start my day, you know, I always give thanks, you know, to my higher power, God of my understanding, for what I've been gifted. It's the biggest gift I could have been given, and, you know, to have lost those 5.5 years just because my thinking was warped, you know, and today the 12 steps, it just sorts my thinking out. You know, it's always about having a conscience. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? You know, I used to speak to Kim every single week, and now we speak sort of about every 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, always there at the end of the phone if I need advice, which I often still do. But she always straightens out my thinking and tells me, you know, if I'm debating something, that's often when I will go to her for guidance. And it's like, what do I do in this situation? And 9 times out of 10, she'll say to me, take it to God, which I do. And then we get the right answer. You know, we absolutely do. I am sort of drying up a little bit now, but I have missed loads out. I know I have. You know, if you are new into recovery, if you're back from a relapse, absolutely just commit to doing this stuff. You know, if this stuff didn't give me something wow factor, you know, majority of the time, I wouldn't be doing it. And if it was really hard where I couldn't fit it into my life or it became too challenging, you know. So, I feel very, very lucky, very blessed and a very happy customer. So, you know, if you haven't got a sponsor or just embarking on this journey, knuckle down. You know, we're blessed in CA to work out the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the original 12-step program, you know, and the answers, all of the answers to life are in that book. You know, get a sponsor, break it down for you word by word, line by line. Use the Big Book Dictionary, which it reveals an awful lot. So I will leave it there, and thank you for allowing me to share tonight.
Thanks, Ken.